Hey, what's up, guys? I want to talk about this movie that I watched like a few days ago. Thing is, I'm swallowing. That's what she said. So basically, I watched the movie this weekend, and I was recording it, and then basically, I know some people hate that word, so maybe I'll stop saying basically. But basically, I watched it and I recorded the entire thing, and it was out of focus. And I thought it was pretty funny. Not necessarily the review, but I thought it was funny that, just one little minor thing can just change your entire perception of what you thought was pretty good. And I guess that kind of relates to the movie experience that I had with Alita Battle Angel. Now, Alita Battle Angel was a movie that I was highly anticipating. It was a movie I was very excited about, from all the marketing material and the fact that it was based off a manga that was very popular in Japan and also reached American audiences. I was really excited for it because it looked like a wholesome, great manga to movie adaptation, and I'll tell you that overall, not a bad movie. Not a bad movie. And honestly, you could stop watching the review right here. But if you want more detail, then follow me.
Does it bother you that I'm not completely human?
You are the most human person I have ever met.
If you guys know the story about this movie, basically James Cameron, the director of some of the best action films ever made, the Terminator series, well, we're not going to go into the third one because that wasn't his property, but the first two were his, and those are some of the best action films / horror films ever. So, so he acquired the rights to the story way back, and he was wanting to make this his movie, his project. This was his passion project. This is what he was trying to do when he acquired the rights for the manga. And basically, things happened. He took on too many projects. For some reason, he wanted to make 5 Avatar movies, which he is currently shooting, which I will place footage of the behind the scenes for that movie right here. I hope you enjoyed that. That was obviously a joke. James Cameron had this in the back burner for a long time, and he really wanted to make this movie, but it just never happened. And that's the thing about big studio movies. Sometimes they just don't happen, even if the person behind it is a god at making movies. And projects fall apart. Edgar Wright, Ant-Man, blah, 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 blah. So basically, he handed the torch over to Robert Rodriguez, who is not a bad filmmaker in any sense. He made classic films like the Spy Kids series and nothing else. Robert Rodriguez has made nothing else in cinema. That is it. He's only made the Spy Kids films. I'm being sarcastic. He's made such hits. Spy Kids. 3D. All that being said, this movie was something that I was highly anticipating because of all of that, because of all the buzz behind it, because of who was backing it up, and the fact that James Cameron was producing this movie. I was thinking, okay, what I'm expecting is a spectacle, because if you've watched Avatar, then you know that he's a spectacle filmmaker. He is someone who wants to push the boundaries of technology and filmmaking, and he wants to integrate those two subjects and create something new that you've never seen. And do I think this movie was an envelope pusher? No, not necessarily. But do I think that this movie had things that were technologically immersive? Yes, I do. And that will start off my positives. My positives for this film was the CG rendering on some of the characters and just the world that was created. I think what Robert Rodriguez had to do was take the torch from someone who is well known. Obviously, James Cameron is a well-known director, but someone who is known for his spectacle. And he took that torch, and I think he carried it well. Do I think James Cameron could have carried it even further? Yes, of course. He's always pushing the boundaries, and even in his old age, he has still made stuff that isn't completely immersive. I remember my experience coming out of Avatar, remembering I wanted to stay in Pandora. Looking back now, I'm like, it kind of sucks. There's no toilets. Like, I don't know if I want to stay there. But looking at this movie, I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, I want to be a part of this world. I want to go see Motorball. I want to be a part of this. I want cybernetic enhancements. I mean, like, I want body parts that are stronger. I wanted to be a part of this world. This world was immersive, the world was well realized, and this movie takes place in the 26th century, so it's far enough from our reality, from our current time, that we can kind of displace some judgment here and there, because we can just assume, hey, this takes place hundreds of years in the future. Honestly, any of this stuff could happen, because look at the rate that technology has grown, even though I'm pretty sure at that rate in the 26th century we would not even exist. But let's say for this fictional reality that everything like that can exist. Motorball exists. For some reason people still rollerblade, I don't know, and people still wear cargo pants, which I think is Alita's only sin in this movie, is that she wears cargo pants and she dresses like zebra stripe gum. Other than that, if you're expecting a world that is imaginative and that is quite loyal to the source material in a lot of ways, then yeah, I think you will enjoy the world that this creates. And that would lead me to my next positive, which is Alita. Alita for me was a positive because of the way that she was realized by Rosa Salazar, the actress who portrays Alita. I don't know how much of it was actually Rosa Salazar's face or features, but I think the character itself was very well realized. I think that the CG on her was quite impeccable, and that if it was just the eyes that were augmented to look the way they were, then I think they did a pretty good job. However, there were parts in the movie where Alita's eyes were not emoting the same as her mouth and her rest of her face, and a lot of the times that could have been distracting. A lot of times people could say that was the uncanny valley, where you look at their eyes and something just doesn't seem right, it doesn't match the rest of them. And if you see movies like The Dawn of the Planet of the Apes or War for the Planet of the Apes, you see their eyes and you see how seamless and you see how real it looks. And this movie didn't quite have that 100% of the time, so I think that would be like a minor nitpick though if you had to really choose it, because everything else about her character is very endearing. Alita is someone who's very naive, she's very trusting of everyone, she's trusting of everything. She is someone who puts 100% of whatever emotion she's feeling into whatever she is feeling at that time, and she will react accordingly. And I think that's something that's very great about her character, because a lot of the times we could look at a character like her who was so skilled and has such expertise in fighting, and you could call her off as a Mary Sue, but I think in this movie that she leans so far into her emotions, a lot of the times that actually dictates her actions, and that makes her a flawed character in that way. Someone who is so perfectly perfect physically, but so emotionally weak. And I would say emotionally weak, not in the fact that having emotions is weak, but not being able to control them, not being able to make the right decisions based off those. That's what I mean by weak. It's not weak to be emotional, guys. It's okay to cry. Moving on from that, I would say my next positive for this film would probably be... Wait, do I have another positive for this film? I think that's it. Moving on from there, I would say that Dr. Ito, played by Christoph Waltz, was someone who kind of wavers between being both a positive and a negative, and I guess this will be my transition into the negatives of this movie for me. Dr. Ito is someone who is also endearing himself, and a lot of his character is shown through how he treats Alita. Dr. Ito sort of plays the father figure to Alita and chooses to take on this girl and chooses to be her father. And in a lot of other stories you could say that's a little bit weird, but in this movie he makes it believable, and he puts on a performance here and there that is quite believable and is quite charming at times. But then there are other times where he can come off as a little bit comical, or he can just be used as an exposition machine. That leads me into my negatives. My first negative that I want to pick out is Hugo. Good old male sandwich Hugo. Good old male sandwich Hugo is basically there to be the pair of lips for Alita to kiss halfway through the movie. Moving on from that, I would say another weakness for this movie would be the weak character work, especially done with Mahershala Ali's character and Jennifer Connelly. Jennifer Connelly is a fantastic actress, and if you haven't seen her in anything, watch A Beautiful Mind. She is fantastic in that movie. Very moving, very breathtaking. But in this movie, man, she's just got nothing going for her. There is just like nothing there. It's just dead. And I don't know if it's the cybernetic enhancements. I don't even know if she had cybernetic enhancements. She just had like a dot on her forehead. But she was pretty one note, pretty boring, and fairly forgettable. And then we go into Mahershala Ali's character, who is basically a puppet the entire time, and he just serves to be basically the mouthpiece for some other force. And I thought that was kind of a waste of Mahershala Ali's character, because man, he is so good in every other thing that he's in. I remember seeing him in Place Beyond the Pines, and I was like, this guy, there's something special about this guy. Like, he's gonna be big. And then, lo and behold, like a year and a half later, he's just in everything. My final negative for this movie would be that this movie has a sad case of sequelitis. There's this ongoing trend with movies, and I would not be surprised to say if they were inspired by a certain marvelous company, and to be honest, it's a little bit tired. It's overstayed its welcome a little bit, and I think it really detracts from a lot of movies, because for this movie personally, and to tie this back into what I was talking about in the beginning of this review, there is this epidemic where we have to establish a universe in a movie, but not necessarily conclude the hero's story. And then we call that one part in a series. And for me, that is so sad. When you have series of books, when you have a series of novels, I get it. I get that this comes from a manga, that this is a story that is going to continually unfold. But when you establish a movie, when you put the first one in the series, you have to realize that money is not always promised, that being backed up for a sequel is not always something that happens. And then when you have a hapless project that just ends on the note where you feel like the story didn't exactly conclude in any way, it's just a tease for the future, it's just a tease. And like I said with my positives, there was a lot that I loved about this movie. Like, keep in mind, my positives for this movie were overwhelming in my mind. I was in love with this world, I was in love with the character, I thought she was great, and I thought a lot of the things had potential. But just because things have potential doesn't mean it's an automatic sequel, and it doesn't mean that you can't conclude a story in a satisfying way. And this movie does all those things that other movies have been trying to establish. They're trying to establish their own universe, they're trying to create this hype for a sequel, they're trying to create, you know, 4 more movies down the line when they haven't even earned it after 1. And I know this movie's probably gonna make big bucks, and you know what? Great. You know, they're gonna get their sequel, probably, most likely, and they're all gonna win. They're all gonna go home with fat pockets. But like, for me, as a moviegoer, and maybe many others, it just feels a little bit cheap. And I feel like I just watched them take more of my money. And the sad part is I know I'm gonna give them my money. I know if that sequel comes out, Alita battles her demons, I'm going to give them my money. And that's the frustrating part, is that I'm a sheep. I'm a hapless sheep. And I'm gonna keep dishing out my hard-earned money, and they're gonna laugh at me because I didn't even do it against my own will. Wow. Anyways, that really brought me down for the movie. That brought down my experience a little bit. But overall, like I said, not a bad movie anyways. There's a lot to enjoy about this movie. It's very, very, very entertaining, and the motorball sequences are fantastic. It's probably some of the most fun action I've ever seen. I would say another positive for this movie is the fight choreography and the way that it's shot and the way that it actually is visible, unlike Transformers movies where there's so much going on, where there's a bunch of robots and it just looks like scrap metal going. Like, this movie has the same concept, a bunch of scrap metal human beings duking it out, and it's just the coolest thing ever. I had chills coming up my spine. I would say, as a movie-going experience, I watched it in IMAX 3D, and I would suggest for you to watch it in IMAX if you can. 3D is great to watch if you watch the action sequences, but if you honestly don't care for 3D like me, if you have an IMAX only option, then go watch it in IMAX only, I would suggest, because scenes in this movie were shot in IMAX, so definitely worth the money, definitely worth seeing on the big screen. But I would say once this is out of theaters though, I would not pay money to keep a copy of it. So yeah, I guess that would be like a 6.5 out of 10. I feel like that's pretty generous. That's pretty generous, right? 6.5 out of 10? That's like a D. No? I think that's what I told myself was a D in high school. I think that's actually a lot worse. No. Well, I mean, if going by grades, yeah, that's terrible, but for a movie, that means it has some entertainment value. It's a little bit above average. So, go see the movie when you can. Watch it in IMAX or IMAX 3D. Definitely a strong suggestion on the IMAX part, heavy on the IMAX part. But yeah, go enjoy it. So, thank you guys for watching this review, and like always, I will see you later.